What if I told you that I found the most embarrassing thing that Johnny Depp has ever been involved in, ever? And this is it. I know, that's hard to believe too. Hey everybody, my name is OldSkuleNerd. Welcome in. This one is kind of a unique one. This is my vindication. And I know some of you are like, vindication from what, old school? Well, I have a sordid past. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you. See this? See this clip here? Well, watch. That's the HMS Hood. That is dead on the money. It's the HMS Hood.
The knowledge vacuum has sucked the comment section in.
Yeah, so that actually happened. So what had happened was I made a video. Some of you guys remember. I made a video, and because SABATON made a music video about their song Bismarck, and it was an amazing video, and it was done with intense, amazing realism and accuracy to the historical context. And I misidentified a vessel as the HMS Hood, the battle cruiser. And it wasn't. It wasn't at all. And I was wrong. And some people said, well, it's the King George, and that's a battleship. I was like, oh. And for a while, this has haunted me. Almost 2 years, right, guys? 2 years? 2 years, my simple mistake of misidentifying an aircraft carrier and a battle cruiser, and little mistakes here and there have gotten me. Now, a lot of people admit that most of the time, I'm more right than not, but I've never said that I am an official source of information. I'm just a fan. What if I told you there was actually a channel on YouTube that is probably going to copyright and give me a strike on this reaction only because I'm going to point out how horribly wrong they are, because they're actually an official site for information for all of you. This is Mad Lab. Okay, Mad Lab has a channel. 3.6 million subscribers. 28 million views, and they are considered by a lot of people to be like one of those places where you're like, hey, I want to find out the furthest planet from our solar system is, or what's the deepest part of the world, or what's the hottest place on the planet, or what are the top 10 most powerful battleships of all time? If you type any of those questions and you want to know, this channel is one of the channels that pops up, and people will watch their videos and go, now I know stuff, and then they go regurgitate it to everyone they know, not realizing that what they're saying is completely wrong. Yes, this is the most scandalous thing that this person on the screen has ever been involved in, and that's saying a lot. Don't believe me? Let's watch along and see, shall we? Come on. It'll be fun. Come on, watch.
Long. Oh, and also knocking 7 bells out of each other once we get there. So, combining these two favorite pastimes, please join us on an oceanic odyssey through the 10 most incredible battleships ever to have sailed.
I better not get any copyright claims or strikes in this, considering how much stuff they stole. There's some Pearl Harbor movie footage here, Pirates of the Caribbean, a lot of World of Warships content. Really? All right, that's cool.
The HMS Victory. Built in 1765, the HMS Victory was, at the time, the biggest ship ever constructed. over her illustrious...
That is true. It was, at the time, the King Henry V was exactly, I think, 11 feet shorter than it. And up until that time, the King Henry V was the largest ship in the world. But this one beat it. So far, we're okay.
Career, the ship played role.
Oh, and for all my friends out there, Noah's Ark. Actually, Noah's Ark was 312 feet, according to if you go by cubics. This one was 328. So technically, they still consider the Noah's Ark to be unofficial in history, but even if it was, it would still miss it by, I don't know. I just go by what I did the research. Sorry.
Roles in the American War of Independence, the Napoleonic War, and fittingly was Nelson's flagship during his famous victory at the Battle of Trafalgar. Did you see what we did there?
Yeah, it's called, you mispronounced Trafalgar is what you did. Trafalgar? Really? Okay, for all of those who are going, why did he just say Trafalgar? It's because the voice you're hearing is actually someone reading a script. They know nothing about what's going on. And if they weren't reading a script, and if they knew the context, nobody would ever mispronounce Trafalgar. But, not to disappoint anyone, if you think that was the only thing wrong, mispronunciation of names that this person's going to do, but wait, there's so much more.
The Victory may be the oldest commissioned warship in the world, but if she was Britain's proudest moment, then perhaps our next ship is their greatest shame. The Mikasa. Commissioned by the Japanese and built in a place called Barrow-in-Furness, UK in 1899, the battleship Mikasa is the oldest surviving pre-dreadnought battleship in the world.
Wrong. She actually is a dreadnought, okay? And the reason why she's a dreadnought is because she was built as she's actually she's a copy of the Indomitable class dreadnought. They're going to say another word here, and it's completely wrong.
Shamefully for the Brits, however, this 120-year-old ironclad in the newest...
She's not an ironclad, okay? Ironclads were no longer built after 1892. The last dreadnought, the last ironclad was built. Remember, ironclads were taking either wooden keels and wrapping them in iron, and then after that, they would make iron keels, but they would build them with iron plates laid over the top. This was actually an iron hull, and she is a dreadnought. And the way you know that, dreadnoughts were the first ones with pivotable, turreted main guns, like this one right here. The fact that the video says she was built in 1899 tells you immediately she's not an ironclad. Again, the last ironclad ever laid down was in 1892. After that, they went to dreadnought. She's not a pre-dreadnought. She's one of the first versions. She's a copy of the British Indomitable class, but she was built for the Japanese Navy. Again, little mistakes, but this is just leading you into the really bad ones. And you're ready for them? They're coming.
Surviving British battleship, which says a lot about how the British look after their ships. Well, except the Victory, and the Unicorn, and the... Alright, I'll shut up. Anyway, the Mikasa played a pivotal role as the flagship of the Japanese fleet during the Battle of Tsushima. During the battle, the Japanese Navy destroyed 2/3 of the Russian fleet in the Tsushima Strait between Korea and southern Japan. It was the first time in history that wireless technology had played a major part in a sea battle, and that, combined with the Mikasa's greater speed and firepower, helped herald a new dawn in naval warfare. The Mutsu. We're staying with Japan for two good reasons. One, on the day she was launched in 1921, the Mutsu was the fastest, most powerful warship on the planet. And two, for the first time, the Japanese had built the ship themselves.
True.
The Mutsu, a Nagato-class super dreadnought, was the first ship on Earth to have 16-foot 16-foot mounted guns. Ironically,
Okay, you heard that?
on Earth to have 16-foot mounted guns.
16-foot mounted
Ironically,
guns. Wrong on two parts. Number one, it's 16-inch. Whoever read this or whoever wrote this up looked at it on some kind of Wikipedia page, saw 16 and saw the quotation mark and thought, oh, that's foot. No, that's inches, you idiot. Oh, and by the way, that's also wrong. Anyway, there is no ship in the world with a 16-inch gun. And I'll tell you why in just a few seconds. It says mounted. Wait, what did it say? The first one to have mounted 16-foot cannons. They're turreted 16-inch cannons. But again, the reason why I need everyone to get off of 16-inch guns, and they're also the reason why it's not okay, we know that it's not 16 foot. By the way, the barrels on a main battle cannon of a modern naval vessel, say like the, USS Iowa, which by the way will come in later in this video. The actual, if you went 16 foot is about halfway down that barrel. They're like 47 feet. It's like 42 to 47 feet long. They're extremely long. Okay, so it's 16-inch. It's wrong, but doesn't matter. Also, the Mutsu didn't even have 16-inch guns. It had 16.1-inch guns. In fact, all naval battleships that you hear about, including the United States North Carolina class and the Iowa class, which is the most famous of U.S. battleship classes, even though everyone under has this understanding that they're 16-inch guns, technically they're 16.1-inch guns. And there's a reason for that. Because the United States is the only country that uses inches. Everyone else uses centimeters. Everyone. In fact, the United States now uses centimeters when it talks about its torpedoes because everyone does. The United States is the only country that uses inches in classifications for measurements. Everyone else uses metric, we use imperial. Why? Why do we do a lot of things? I don't know, it doesn't matter. But the reason why they're 16.1 is because battleship cannons, especially after the turn into the 20th century, something very interesting occurred. In modern rifles, we went from muskets to rifles, where we actually put a spiral groove down the inside of a barrel called rifling, which made the rounds spin, increasing accuracy and distance. Very important when you're talking about naval cannon. So they put rifling in barrels. Okay? So the Mutsu had 41 centimeter guns. And if you do the conversion, 41 centimeters is 16.1 inches. Now, why is the 0.1? Why don't they just make it 16? Why 41 centimeters? Why don't they just make it 40? Because it's got to slide down the tube, you dipshit. I mean, think about it, okay? Centimeters, right? If the hole for the shell, for the projectile is 40 inches, and the projectile is 40 inches, it's not moving down the barrel. It's the same size. So that 1 centimeter distance all the way around the breech is the only allotted space for movement, which is why you can go 50 calibers and this thing and it can shoot 20 miles. Okay, that's the idea. It's not 16 foot, 16 inch. And it's not 16 inch, it's actually 16.1. Just like it's 41 centimeters and not 40 centimeters, because you have to have a little bit of a gap for it to slide down. We are 2 minutes into a 14-minute video, and these are not even the bad errors. The bad errors are going to make you go, this whole part of your head is going to be swollen and red like my logo above my head. Watch. Why not watch?
The planet. And 2, for the first time, the Japanese had built the ship themselves. The Mutsu, a Nagato-class super dreadnought, was the first ship on Earth to have 16-foot mounted guns. Ironically, the Mutsu would survive a number of wars only to be destroyed by her own guns. On the 8th of June 1943, a shell in the Mutsu's turret number 3 mysteriously detonated and split the...
Isn't it cute how they keep showing pictures of, this is the USS Tennessee, and this is, hold on.
Guns. On the 8th of June...
This is the battle, this is either the battleship Tennessee or the Wisconsin. It could be the Wisconsin because the Wisconsin got hit by torpedoes and its magazines didn't explode and it sunk and was sitting at the bottom of Pearl Harbor. So it was sitting like this for a while, but they keep showing pictures of the Mutsu, but on video, but they keep showing pictures of US battleships destroyed at Pearl Harbor in 1941. None of these are pictures of the Mutsu, and the Mutsu wasn't even involved in Pearl Harbor. She was actually involved in the Aleutian Island diversion tactic, but that's not the point. Let's just keep going.
In 1943, a shell in the Mutsu's turret number 3 mysteriously detonated and split the great ship in 2. Tragically, the only significant event that day was a visit by a group of air cadets. Of her 1,474-man crew and 149 visitors aboard that day, just 353 crew and 13 cadets survived. What is now recognized as Japan's worst naval disaster. The Prinz Eugen.
Did you hear that shit? Wait, I'll play it again.
The Prinz Eugen.
Okay, they spell it Prince, E-U-G-E-N. So, okay, Prince Eugen. Prince Eugen. That's how it's pronounced. Prince Eugen. Why? Because I've had German people tell me so. But in the bottom of the video, which you can't see if you watch the original video, it says P-R-I-N-C-E-E-U-G-E-N-E. What? Okay, so we're going to watch about the... Hey, let's hear about the Prince Eugen, shall we? This is where all the mistakes start to pile up and get to the ridiculous level. Watch.
The Prinz Eugen was technically a heavy cruiser, but
Correct.
It was her part in the infamous double act with the battleship Bismarck and her unsinkable nature that has earned her a place in our top 10. At the height of the Second World War, in a daring bid to break out.
At the height of the Second World War. Okay, by the way, this entire battle happened pretty early on. Doesn't matter.
Into the Atlantic Ocean, the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen.
You heard that? The battleship Bismarck? I don't know where the R comes from, but hopefully you're going to hear that R a lot. The Bismarck. It's awesome.
To break out into the Atlantic Ocean, the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen ran the gauntlet of the British naval fleet. Not only that, the pair managed to heavily damage the Prince of Wales, and even more impressively, they managed to sink them. All but invincible British
They sank the Prince of Wales? Are you sure? Try again.
Impressively, they managed to sink them. All but invincible British battleship, the mighty HMS Hood. This
HMS Hood, not a battleship. Of course, I make that mistake and my name gets dragged through the annals of YouTube for 2 years. This is a channel that is an authority for information on YouTube. This isn't some guy that made something in his backyard. This is Mad Lab. They have like 3.6 million subscribers. And even they're wrong on way more than I am. It gets worse. Keep watching.
This was to be the end of the Prinz Eugen's good fortune, however, and despite a few other minor victories, the ship was plagued by technical and engine problems. The ship did survive World War II intact, despite a British revenge attack which nearly sank her off the coast of Norway. Indeed, the Prinz Eugen is one of the few ships on Earth which could claim to have survived a nuclear attack, after it emerged unscathed during nuclear trials at Bikini Atoll.
And yet they show it turned over, capsized in the Pacific Ocean. Okay.
USS Arizona. The Arizona was built in Brooklyn, New York between 1914 and 15. Alongside her sister ship, the Pennsylvania, she was one of the only 2 Pennsylvania-class battleships ever built. Upon her launch, the USS Arizona was the heaviest armed vessel in the U.S. Navy. She boasted 12 14-feet guns. She was also the largest ship.
Ooh, some more of those 14-feet guns. Impressive, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
In the U.S. fleet at 185 meters long and weighing 31,400 tons. The USS Arizona was pivotal in the Second World War, despite the fact she never fired a shot. In fact, it was the sinking of the Arizona, amongst other vessels in a Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, which galvanized U.S. support for the Second World War, leading to the U.S. joining the Allied war effort. Legend has it that when she was struck by a Japanese bomb, the subsequent explosion ignited munitions on board, causing a secondary detonation so powerful that the ship actually left the water for a second. In all, 1,177 souls lost their lives on board the Arizona. On May 30th, 1962, a memorial was officially dedicated. Part of the funds to build the memorial were raised by a benefit concert by none other than Elvis Presley.
Does anyone give a shit that Elvis Presley did? No, because that's the most important part of this video about the 10 most powerful battleships, is that we're going to make sure you know Elvis had something to do with it.
Stop it. Get some help.
I wish they would.
The Tirpitz and the Tall Boy.
Wait, say that again?
The Tirpitz and the Tall Boy.
Are you sure about that?
Do you mean the Tirpitz? The sister ship to the Bismarck? Wow. You can't make this stuff up. Oh, wait. Apparently they did.
The Tirpitz is the lesser-known sister of the Bismarck. Built in the dry docks of Wilhelmshaven, the Tirpitz had a long-standing feud with the British Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy. The Brits first tried to destroy the ship before she was even built and rained bombs down on her cradle in the docks of Wilhelmshaven. They were unsuccessful, but their efforts didn't end there. The Germans, realizing the ship had become a prize target, based her in Norwegian waters. This meant she was far enough from the front line to be considered a serious target, but equally posed a formidable threat to the Allied convoys heading to Russia and back. Despite the Third Reich's efforts to downplay her importance, the Royal Air Force was determined to sink the Tirpitz. After repeated unsuccessful raids, they eventually concluded that the ship's armor was too strong to be penetrated by conventional munitions and set about designing a bomb with the express purpose of sinking the battleship. They turned the legendary British inventor, Sir Barnes Wallis.
By the way, it's not that her armor was too advanced for standard munitions. No, armor-piercing shells from a naval gun could penetrate her. They could not reach her with naval weapons. So they had to rely on aerial bombs. And yes, gravity munitions of the time were high explosive, not armor-piercing. Plus, even with gravity weapons, if you were to drop a single lead depleted uranium shell, 1,000 pounds, from like 50,000 feet, like from a B-52, the terminal velocity, even with gravity fall, isn't the same as powder propelled munitions from a rifled gun 10 miles away. It's just different. So they just couldn't reach it. So they had to develop a bomb that had enough inertia to penetrate the hull and yet was armor piercing. See, that's where it came into play, because there was no propellant when you're dealing with gravity dropped munitions. So that's a lot of the problem. They just didn't know how to explain it. Of course, they didn't know how to say Tirpitz either, or Bismarck, but apparently we're not holding that against them. At the end of this video, not only am I going to show you how many subscribers this channel has, but how many people have seen this video and given it a thumbs up.
the mind behind the legendary bouncing bombs made famous by the Dam Busters.
Correct.
His solution was the Tall Boy.
Correct.
The unique 12,030-pound weapon was designed to be more than a match for the Tirpitz armor plating. After a few aborted attempts, in September of 1944, the Royal Air Force launched a daring raid. Despite the loss of nearly a dozen bombers on takeoff, the Brits eventually hit the Tirpitz with a Tall Boy. The ship was damaged severely, but managed to limp to a nearby port, where it was used as a semi-static artillery battery. The Brits, with no way of knowing how badly they had crippled the ship, decided to try again, and 2 months later, they finally ended the feud and capsized the Tirpitz in a Norwegian fjord.
And in that raid, they dropped 4 Tall Boys on her. 4. Only one of the 4 actually hit midships. The first 2 hit near the stern, and one did a glancing blow near the bow. It's kind of hard to be precise when you're bombing from 10,000 feet above.
The Bismarck. If the Brits were at war with the Tirpitz, the entire war effort was at war with the Bismarck. She was built in secrecy and
She was built in secrecy. Wait, hold on. The Bismarck section of this video is the second most brazen level of crap you'll ever hear. Starting with the fact they don't know how to say Bismarck and the mysterious R comes in, and I don't know why. She was built in secret. So secret that the Nazi party made...
With the Tirpitz, the entire war effort was at war with the Bismarck. She was built
in such secrecy that the Nazi party made this propaganda video of her launch because she was a secret. She wasn't built in secrecy. She was the emblem of the revival of German military might. Literally, Hitler went to her christening, broke the champagne. They made a whole video launching. It wasn't in secret. A secret to who? Like 75 Australians didn't know? Maybe?
In secrecy and launched in May of 1939. Such was the secrecy surrounding the...
That's my favorite part. We're not only going to launch it in secrecy, we're going to have a party.
9.
And this is her name. And by the way, there is no R between the B and the I. Eric Dipshits. Is that your name? The Bismarck.
Such was the secrecy surrounding the vessel that by the time she was sighted by a British reconnaissance plane, she had nearly made it into the North Atlantic.
Wrong. No. They watched her do her sea trials in the Denmark Straits, around the fjords, okay, to the east side of Denmark. But what they didn't want, and as long as she stayed there, she was protected by Luftwaffe air cover. There was no way that the British could get to her. What they were concerned with was that little bit of ocean in between Sweden and Denmark. That's called the Denmark Strait. If she should go through there, then they have a problem. But as long as she stayed to the east of there, in the fjords, in the shore waters around northern Germany and eastern Denmark, they're fine. They knew she was there, but they couldn't get to her. Way too much. At the time this was going on, the Luftwaffe had complete air superiority over Europe at that time. In fact, the only place that the Germans did not have air superiority at this time was over Britain itself. But everywhere else, they had it on lock. What they were concerned is that if she snuck out, so they would send out reconnaissance planes every day to check where she was moored at. They knew that she would go out, do little test steaming and firing exercises, and do what's called a shakedown. You do shakedowns for every ship, whether it's military or not, to test its seaworthiness, test its speed, its stability, make minor adjustments. It's called a shakedown. Everyone does it. But the Germans were doing it, and they would watch it every day, and they'd send a reconnaissance plane over to make sure she was in her slip at the fjord. One day she breaks out and she's going to rendezvous with the Prince Eugen and the Schwarhurst. Okay? They never mention her, but she was there too. So, again, another thing that you can look it up on Wikipedia. It's not that hard, guys.
Top speeds of 30 knots, which in naval terms was light speed. The Brits.
Her top speed was not 30 knots. Wasn't. The British destroyers that surrounded her, their top speed was 30 knots. Her top speed was 26, which still made her faster than every other battleship in the world. Battle cruisers were a little faster, but for battleships, she was way faster than the King George. But she wasn't, the destroyers were faster at 30. She was about 24 to 26. But again, it's the little mistakes, but they've only made about 1,000. So we're going to continue on.
Knew that if the ship made it unchallenged into the Atlantic Ocean, she could single-handedly sink their entire war effort.
Wrong. Not single-handedly. With the Prince Eugen. Prince Eugen. Not Prince Eugene. Prince Eugen. And the Schwarhurst. They were going to go in a 3-ship flotilla. A battleship without cruisers is still a sitting duck to torpedo destroyers and aircraft. And they knew that at the time. The Bismarck being alone in the Atlantic was not a danger. But you put her with the Prince Eugen and the Schwarhurst, and that's a battle group that could really cause problems. But again, what do I know?
With everything at stake, they sent their best ships to intercept. After a fraught naval battle, the Bismarck and her co-conspirator, the Prinz Eugen, sunk the mighty...
The Prinz Eugen. Well, number one, at least they said Bismarck this time instead of Bismarck. So that's an acceptable... Okay, you've corrected. But when you corrected that, you said Prinz Eugen. Prinz Eugen.
The HMS Hood and crippled the Prince of Wales. The battle took a heavy toll on British morale, and worse, their worst fears had been realized. The Bismarck was loose to run amok in the Atlantic.
Bismarck.
For the next 3 days, the Allied forces put all their efforts into sinking the Bismarck. In all, it took squadrons of bombers and 3 other warships to finish.
Not a single bomber. Not a single bomber. Swordfish torpedo biplanes maybe, but not a single bomber. It's cute though.
The job. But on May 29th, the Royal Navy cruiser, the Dorsetshire, put 3 torpedoes into her side, and the Bismarck...
You mean the Dorchester? Just asking for a friend.
...sank in the cold Atlantic waters. Of her 2,200 crew, only 110 survived. Over the years, the sinking of the Bismarck has been the subject of many films and documentaries, and there are even rumors of a new release.
Oh, please.
The mighty USS Iowa.
All right. I know a lot of you were like, okay, the stuff with the 16-foot gun was funny. It was cute. It was pretty cute. It was hilarious. Wrong, but it was cute. Calling it the Prince Eugene, that was a hilarious one. That was pretty funny. And the whole situation with the Bismarck, that was funny. A lot of errors, but it was funny. This one kind of pissed me off. Follow along.
The Iowa was one of 4 next-generation World War II super battleships. These Iowa-class battleships had an impressive turn of speed and could cruise at 33 knots in open water. The Iowa was 887 feet or 227 meters long, weighed a staggering 48,500 tons, and her full complement...
I want you to listen and read what it says.
1,500 tons and her meters long, weighed a staggering 48,500 tons, and her full complement was nearly 2,000 crew.
Dude, you're off by 9,000. You're literally off by a submarine. Okay.
The Iowa-class ships were commissioned in response to Japan's continuing treaty-defying attempts to build ever-superior naval warships.
No, they were designed and commissioned because the Japanese destroyed all of our battleships in the Pacific. Why would we build the same ones we built in 1915s? Of course not. We're going to build new ones, and they're going to be awesome. By the way, the Iowa class, there were 4 ships. Can you name them? I can. By the way, there was the Iowa. Oh, the USS Missouri, which is the one that surrendered, accepted the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay. The Massachusetts. Do you know what the last one is? A lot of people think that it was the North Carolina, but that's not true. The North Carolina was its own class of battleship, and there was only one. They built the North Carolina and realized, ooh, we can make it better. Let's change it up. Okay, we're going to call it Iowa. It was the Iowa, the Massachusetts, the Missouri, and I want to say the Wisconsin, but I might be wrong on the Wisconsin part. But what I'm not wrong on is the crap they're about to dump on you in about 2 seconds. Watch this.
During the Second World War, the Iowa played significant roles escorting convoys across the Atlantic, and then later
Correct.
as part of the Pacific Fleet. She even carried President Roosevelt from the U.S. to North Africa, and at one point was the flagship of the entire U.S. fleet.
That is correct.
Iowa also served in the Korean War.
Yeah. And the Vietnam War, too.
And in fact, despite being decommissioned a number of times, she was active in military service right up to 1980, when she was finally decommissioned after a tragic accident cost the lives of 47 crew members.
She was decommissioned in 1980? 1980.
Are you sure about that?
1980. It's funny because if she was decommissioned in 1980, then I want to know how turret number 2 had a powder spark explosion killing, I think it was 42 sailors. 9 years later, in April of 1989. Old School Nerd, are you telling me they're off by 9 years? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. This video is off by 9 years and 9,000 tons. They're telling you that this battleship was decommissioned in 1980 after an explosion killed multiple soldiers in turret number 2 on April 1989. What'd they do? Put the battleship in a DeLorean and hit 88 miles an hour? Because that's the stupidest shit I've heard all day. And I just watched them talk about the Bismarck for 5 minutes. Also, they're going to tell you that this is the end of the Iowa class, but it's not. Let's let them talk their nonsense more.
Decommissioned after a tragic accident cost the lives of 47 crew members during a routine gunnery exercise. These days, the Iowa, along with the other 4 ships in her class, serves her time as a floating museum. You can find her at the dock in the city of Los Angeles, California.
Okay, and that's the end of that. Here's the problem. The Iowa was decommissioned, but not in 1980 and not in 1989. She continued to sail. However, there was a lot of backlash from the American public to stop the use of heavy naval guns. Why? Because when the Iowa's number 2 turret had the powder bag explosion during its loading for a live fire exercise, a review was done by Congress and the Senate. It was typical when we have a disaster, everybody's got to put their finger in there. They determined that the use of powder breech loading naval cannon was an obsolete notion. It was super dangerous and shouldn't be done anymore. But the Navy thought, you know what? Let's screw Congress one last time. And 1 year after the investigation of the Iowa was completed, the USS Missouri and the USS Massachusetts were in the Persian Gulf lobbing 1-ton shells 20 miles inland into Kuwait as part of Operation Desert Storm. Why? Because no matter what you want to say, the Iowa, the Massachusetts, and the Missouri at the time could carry more Tomahawk cruise missiles than any Los Angeles class submarine and all the cruisers of the U.S. Navy because of their displacement weight. They literally carried them on launchable containers on the deck, and they could launch them out. And just the sheer carriage of numbers. Also, if you want to hit a target that's stationary, that's not moving, why would you spend $1 million per Tomahawk when you could lob shells? And remember, you could fire one every 32 seconds from 9 guns on board. So technically 9 every 32 seconds. You're talking 18 rounds a minute, 1 ton each, 20 miles inland, stationary targets. You know you're going to hit them. And the operational cost of one of these ships per day, $1.4 million. So in one day, you could literally dump, I don't know, 1,000 Tomahawks worth of munitions on fixed targets, and it's cheaper. The Navy did it just to prove a point. And then after Desert Storm, okay, fine. Now there'll be museum pieces. But don't tell me in this video that because of an explosion in turret 2 of the USS Iowa, that battleships never fired guns again. Because less than a year later, they were dropping shells all over Kuwait. And this channel is where people are getting their information to share with their friends and children. What? All right. The rest of it I don't care about, but we're going to watch it anyway.
Yamato. During the Second World War, the Yamato and her...
Does she have 20-foot guns? No. She has 20.23-inch guns? But let's not get into that either.
Her sister ship, the IJN Musashi, laid claim to the title of the most powerful warships on Earth. Built in defiance of an international treaty, the Yamato was almost twice the legally allowed weight due to her insane levels of armor. It's said that the Yamato had plating 20 inches thick in places, which was far more than any other vessel on the planet. She was built to ensure Imperial Japanese naval superiority, and she might have secured that claim had it not been for the rise of the aircraft carrier. The Yamato's weight wasn't just for show. The Japanese needed a solid foundation on which they could mount 18.1 feet caliber guns.
Not only did they do 18.1 feet, it's actually, even if it was foot, it would be 18.1 foot guns. They're going 18.1 feet guns. Okay, again, 18.1 inches, you idiot. And yes, the Yamato was completely badass. However, she was barely used because the Yamato and the Musashi were more than just monsters of the ocean. They were designed and built. And once Pearl Harbor occurred, there were many within the Japanese Navy and in the government of Japan realized that the Yamato and the Musashi would dominate the ocean for years. Until 1 month later at the Battle of Midway. At the Battle of Midway, every battleship on the planet suddenly became obsolete, including the Yamato and the Musashi. In fact, the most important aspect of the Yamato's career after that was being the flagship of Admiral Yamamoto. that was literally its biggest purpose. Was it was a show of might. And similar to the Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier now, just like the Nimitz aircraft carrier of the 80s and 90s, all you got to do is show up with it and things kind of settle down. Because when a boy like that rolls into the waters off the coast of your town or your country, you're like, all right, guys, party's over. Everybody needs to go home and shut up. I mean, that's pretty much what you do with that. But again, it was very impractical considering it's funny because the one battle that the Yamato and the Musashi probably could have made a big difference in was the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and neither one of them were there. Oh well.
At that point, the largest on any vessel in history. The Japanese also knew that the US would be unable to build a ship of equal size on the East Coast, and that even if they could build one in the shipyards of New York, it would be too heavy to pass through the Panama Canal.
True.
This meant if the US did try to match the Yamato, they would literally have to sail it around the entire planet.
The Yamato. Nice.
Before they could engage the Yamato and her sister ship. In combat, however, she proved to be less than stellar. Although no tortoise during the Battle of Medway, she failed even to get her huge guns into range before the battle had ended over. She fared better in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and despite sustaining several hits from bombs and torpedoes, she seemed to be earning her reputation as unsinkable. The same could not be said of her sister ship, the Masashi, which was sunk by Allied forces in 1944. In 1945, the Japanese war efforts were in chaos, and in a last-ditch, seemingly suicidal mission, the Yamato was ordered to run around the coast of Okinawa. The idea was to use the ship to create a permanent defense artillery battery. En route, however, she was engaged by the U.S. carrier group. Her anti-aircraft guns blazed for 9 hours, but they were no match for the sustained attack, and her conventional guns proved useless against the aerial assault. Eventually, after a battle that raged for half a day, the ship was rocked by an explosion so powerful it could be seen from the southern coast of Japan, some 120 miles away. The devastating detonation utterly destroyed what was left of the ship, and tragically, of her nearly 2,800-strong crew, only 280 were pulled from the burning wreckage in cold waters. So what could possibly top a list of such formidable, legendary warships? Where can we go after the legend of Bismarck, the history of the Victory, or the sheer size?
And this is where this video turns into some kind of commercial for the worst ship ever built by the U.S. Navy.
Size of the Yamato. Well, there's only one place we can go, and where we're going, we don't need roads, which is handy since this video is about ships. That's right, friends, we're headed for the future. The USS Zumwalt Destroyer, aka the stealth battleship. The days of lumbering.
The 10 most powerful battleships of all time, and they end it with a destroyer. All right.
Hulks of steels as tall as buildings and longer than a freight train are over. These days, the key to owning the seas is to do it quietly. Somewhere out there on the internet, someone in a bunker full of model ships, wearing a captain's hat and surrounded by books about war, there will be someone hurling nautical abuse at their screen because we're calling the USS Zumwalt a battleship. But we don't care because the USS Zumwalt is the future king.
You don't care because you didn't care about any of the other shit you got wrong. And it's not the future. Anybody want to tell me what the USS Zumwalt's doing right now? I'll give you 2 guesses, and it ain't being the future.
King of warships, just like our battleships were king in their day. So what makes it special? Well, unlike the others on the
It looks like an upside down boat, and yeah.
list, the idea behind the Zumwalt is not to demonstrate your naval superiority with big
It's to
numbers.
make the ugliest ship ever made.
And firepower. It's secret. It's secrecy itself. The Zumwalt is designed to have a radar signature more akin to a fishing boat. If it's picked up at all, and its low profile and especially neuroflexive surfaces mean the vessel is hard to see with the naked eye. Its sleek hull design also means it's faster than NASA's broadband. Weapons come in the
Here's my favorite part. It's almost invisible to the naked eye. It's 83 feet tall above the waterline. I can see that without a pair of binoculars. It's not that hard. It's damn near impossible to see in the fog. Yeah, so is an aircraft carrier if you're close enough. Damn, man.
Shape of long-range cruise missiles, but the DDG-1000 also boasts an impressive array of high-caliber guns. Is the DDG-1000 USS Zumwalt the battleship of the future?
No.
Tell us what you think. Do you have a favorite?
Okay. Here's my favorite part. And this is where we get into the fun part. At the end of the video, he goes, tell us what you think. Oh, but they did. This video has 1.5 million views and was made in 2019. 2019, which means they already knew that the Zumwalt program has been canceled and is considered a giant failure by both the Navy and the government of the United States. But yet they're still calling it the future. And they have 3.64 million subscribers. Wow. I would click the like button, but there's not enough likes for it to show up. And if I click the dislike, they don't show up. But when you know what does show up? The shit ton of bad, horrible comments. Prinz, Eugen, Tirpitz, Bismarck, my 3 favorite warships of all time. I'm amazed he pronounced hood correctly. Right? Look, if you want to go check this out, I will put the link in the video for this video below so you can go and leave your own hateful message in the comment section. But actually, more entertaining than seeing this video itself is reading the comments of other people just like myself who love naval history and hate what they did with it. When I told you that this was quite possibly the most embarrassing thing that has happened to this guy right here, ever. A lot of people thought I was making a joke. I mean, if you're going to do an Amber Alert, you should do it for this video. It's enough of that. All right.
Stop it. Get some help.
I hope so. We'll see you guys later.